Kiwi Culture here, and welcome to episode 36, the Battle of Te Kakara. This follows on closely from episode 34, so watch that before watching this one. Now, again, I take my account from the book by Peter Hurunui Jones, King Pōtatau. Just remember that Pei is the Ngāti Maniapoto, so he's part of the Waikato crowd here. There are other accounts, and I'll put a link to one from the Journal of the Polynesian Society in the comments. There are many differences, but we shall stay with Pei's account. Now, before going ahead with the battle, we need to introduce three chiefs who feature by name at the beginning of this battle. The first two are supporting Te Rauparaha. Firstly, we have Te Puoho, Ngāti Tama Rangatira. His pa is at Puki Arahi, which is located here. He is the only warrior mentioned as having a musket. He is one of Te Rauparaha's generals. Secondly, there is Rauparaha, also a Ngāti Tama Rangatira, but he is from a different pa further up the coast here. And this pa is also called Te Kakara pa. But don't get it confused with the Te Kakara pa on the side of Lake Taharoa. He is of smaller than average stature, but he is built like the proverbial, and he is muscular, known for his strength, but he also has speed. And he's an expert with the taiaha and the patiti, or the tomahawk. Te Puoho, on his way up, has convinced Rauparaha to come north and support Te Rauparaha. A story is told of a Maniapoto raiding party retreating from the Te Kakara pa. Rauparaha descends by ladder to the beach, pursues the toa, knocks out a straggler with his taiaha, throws him over his shoulder and races back, scales the ladder and dumps his prize at the feet of his adoring hapu. Rauparaha's wife, Maropunamu, has a bad premonition about her husband joining Te Puoho and hides his heavily woven body armour, which he always wears in battle. This, however, does not stop him from going. And lastly, we have Te Awa Itaia. He is a young chief of Ngāti Mahanga, supporting the Waikato Army. He is from the Waiangaroa Harbour, which is Raglan. He was commander of the seaborne force that's come down to support the Waikato Alliance. He will actually live to die of old age in 1866, having lived an illustrious life, including signing the Treaty of Waitangi. So let's turn to the morning of the Battle of Te Kakara. With the sun coming over the Taharoa hills, even though stricken with boils, Te Rauparaha leads his army from Te Kakara pa to the battlefield and is joined there by the warriors from Te Roto pa, who form up at the eastern end of Te Kakara. From where the Taumatakainai stream meets the sea, Te Whero's forces move alongside the stream and enter the battlefield and take up their position on the western side. With all troop movements completed, a deathly quiet descends upon the battlefield, the only sound the distant waves breaking on the shore. It is Te Rauparaha that breaks this silence by his impassioned speech to his army, exhorting them with memories of those gone before. And at the end of it, the whole Ngāti Toa Alliance break into Te Rauparaha's famous haka, Kamate, kamate, kaora, kaora. As if in a stage production, it's now Waikato's turn. Te Rauanganga, Te Whero's father, addresses the Waikato Army. He inspires them with the glory of Hingakaka, with the bravery of their ancestors, and the glory to be had on this battlefield this day. Warriors from both sides move in front of their armies, gesticulating, rolling their eyes and taunting their opposition. A mass haka is performed by Waikato and answered in kind by Ngāti Toa. Everyone is in a high state of readiness, except Te Rauparaha, who has completely exhausted himself and is taken back to Te Kakara to observe the battle from a platform on the tihi. A slow rhythmical cadence is heard as both armies stamp towards each other. The incongruous sound of a shot is heard. A Waikato warrior falls. Te Puaho claims the prized first blood. He reloads. Another warrior falls. The closing of the gap slows. Another warrior falls. Te Puaho can shoot every 15 seconds, and every shot finds a mark. The Waikato advance stalls. There is confusion. Rauparaha now strides over to Te Puaho and says, "That is enough for your gun, or there will be none left for this weaponed hand of mine." A female warrior in the front rank calls, "Oh, Rauparaha, let the gun settle it." Disdainfully, Rauparaha replies, "Who said I should be taught by a woman?" Rauparaha advances onto the battlefield. Great fame will come to any who defeat him. So fame-seeking Waikato Toa come out to meet him. With his taiaha, he slays the first contender, and then calls back that he has claimed first blood. This is a direct insult to Te Puaho. Another batch of Waikato wannabes fall to his taiaha. A Waikato chief of some note is next. Rauparaha parries his blows and then takes his patiti from his belt and thrusts it with such force that it exits his opponent's back. Unable to extract his tomahawk, he lifts his lifeless body over his shoulder and begins to trot back with his prize. Waikato warriors are stunned. It is Te Awi Itaia first to react and sets off after the retreating Rauparaha. Rauparaha stumbles over a burnt clump of tutu. As Te Awi Itaia reaches him, Rauparaha dodges his first blow and a struggle on the ground occurs. Te Awi Itaia manages to land a killing blow and struggles to his feet and announces that Rauparaha is dead. The two armies regather themselves, except for Te Puaho, who has taken the insult from Rauparaha badly and withdraws his warriors from the battle. But more critically, he removes his musket from the battle. The general engagement of both armies now begins. After much fighting, the Waikato forces begin overwhelming the Ngāti Toa Alliance, who begin falling back. They split into two. One half retreats south along the lake's shore and start heading south. The other half fall back to Te Kakara and to Rauparaha. Te Rauparaha, when seeing that the battle is turning, evacuates to Te Arawipa, assisted by his loyal supporters. By the afternoon, the Battle of Te Kakara has ended in a resounding victory for Waikato. Waikato lays siege to all the occupied pa, that is, Te Kawau, Te Roto, and Te Arawi. Now, it must be noted that the tribes involved in this conflict trace their lineage back to the Tainui canoe. Over many decades, intermarriage between all these tribes has been common, and this explains many of the events that follow the battle. Over the next few days, the defenders in the pa engage in negotiations to try and entice their relations to allow them to escape southwards. As Te Rauparaha is their principal target, this is met with success at Te Kawau and Te Roto pa, so much so that these pa are quite depleted, and now the Waikato Army is able to take them with great slaughter of those that remain. For the two power over in Kawhai Harbour, Puewe and Motunaiu, the Ngāti Toa defenders enter into negotiations. Half are allowed to go south and join Ngāti Toa, or the remnants of Ngāti Toa. The other half willingly want to stay in Kawhai and now become associated with the Ngāti Toa people, to whom they are closely related to anyway. So this leaves Te Rauparaha with significant retinue of his most loyal followers under siege on the impregnable Te Aroipa. Many Ngāti Toa faithful try and reach Te Aroipa to support Te Rauparaha, but they are invariably captured and killed. In this book, Pei states that the siege of Te Arowi lasts some weeks, with different sections of the Waikato Army taking turns to guard it. It then came to the turn of the Ngāti Maniapoto to be the guards. Their chief, Te Rangi Tuatea, was distantly related to Te Rauparaha. He has no desire to see him dead. Also, the fall of Te Arowi has no end in sight. Te Rangi Tuatea negotiates across the land bridge with Te Rauparaha, suggesting that if Te Rauparaha agrees to flee south, never to return, things can be arranged. Te Rauparaha wants to join his relations at Mangatautori, the Ngāti Raukawa. Te Rangi Tuatea says no way, he would still be the thorn in their side from there. He suggests Ngāti Tama, but Rangi Tuatea advises he go further south to Te Ati Awa country. He does this because he knows that the Waikato forces are looking to attack Ngāti Tama in the future. Te Rauparaha takes his advice and agrees to the conditions. Te Rangi Tuatea arranges canoes that same night. Hiakai, who has procured the canoes, meets with Te Rauparaha in Te Arowi. At his leaving, Te Rauparaha gives his ancestral lands to Hiakai of Ngāti Mahuta. To this very day, Ngāti Mahuta have those lands. The defenders of Te Arowi leave that night. This is the beginning of Te Rauparaha's and Ngāti Toa's hikoi south, to new lands and a new future. But for us, this is where we will leave Te Rauparaha for the time being. So, just a word of caution. This is Pei Te Hurunui's version. There are significantly different versions in the Journal of the Polynesian Society, and see the link in the comments, as I've mentioned. Always be aware of who is telling the story. Yes, even me. It's funny, I came across an article in this listener on Te Rauparaha and his son, Tamahana. And an article has been written by a Ross Coleman, who claims descent from Te Rauparaha. So let's have a quick look at what he says. By the time he assumed a leadership role within his tribe about 1800, Ngāti Toa's very survival was threatened because of constant attacks from various elements of Waikato and Ngāti Maniapoto, who were vying for control of the Kawhai region and its resources. In the early 1820s, Te Rauparaha engineered the successful migration of his people from their Kawhai homeland to Kapiti. What? So he doesn't mention the Battle of Kawhai, the battle at Te Kakara, and the defeat of Ngāti Toa, which is, what the... Anyway, To Dear Ross, I give him my one-eyed award. So always be critical of what you're being told. That goes for everything, even what I tell you. Okay, that's it from me. I'll see you at the next episode where we'll follow up Te Rauparaha's travel south to Te Awa country. Take it easy. Stay safe out there.